Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, you can do this. Now you may be asking, what am I hearing? Well, what you're hearing is a Bricasti reverb and Airwindows kCathedral. One of them is in one side and the other one's in the other side. And you're hearing both of them. We can do this. I can just select little pieces of test audio, and we'll go back and forth between various things. And while we're doing that, one side is literal Bricasti, like 3000 and up reverb, and the other side is a free open source plugin that you can have right now. Let's have some more of that synth stuff. Now this is fairly tough because it resonates very heavily through this reverb. It is of course a cathedral reverb, so it's supposed to be kind of cavernous. And one of the things about that is that the lows of the reverb don't hit as fast as the highs. They're delayed a little bit. I can bounce over to another section here. Here's just some drums, and it cuts into a little bit of a guitar. The way that those lows hit, it's not an immediate feeding into the reverb. There's a little extra delay in there, and that's one of the things that Bricasti did. Now, what I'm not saying is that I've got it exactly and totally perfectly simulated. I mean, somebody already used to do that, and they did it by stealing Bricasti stuff. I'm not stealing Bricasti stuff, so my thing's not going to sound the same. I'll go back and forth and demonstrate that. But what I am doing is making a thing where with a bit of luck you can get the same basic vibe. Like, here's that snare again. The idea is I should be able to put together something where the basic gist of the sound is functionally working in roughly the same way. And you might actually hear that on my voice, because I'm going to throw kCathedral on the voice as well, just because I can. This is something that I've been using in mixes and things, and I'm giving it to you now, because this was not the Christmas season surprise I hadn't planned. We'll go back around over here. You can hear that we have a bunch of heavy rock in here as well. And it fills up the sound of the cathedral quite heavily. Or we can go back to the synthesizer stuff earlier on. People might recognize this as Alien Kittens. It's not friendly to reverbs. And in fact, let's go back and forth and let's hear what you get extra if you get the full-on Bricasti. Because I think I'm going to be selling the one that I've got. I've got to pay some bills around the house. But I had it. Technically, I still have it. But I had it long enough to study. This is real deal. So this is not my plugin. This is a real Bricasti reverb hardware unit. Whereas if we go over to mine is not quite as good, but it'll still sound kind of like a big cathedral. It has its own kind of echoings and sounds to it. It does not sound exactly the same because it's not a clone. I'm not stealing this from Bricasti. I've tried to learn as well as I could from what I heard in the Bricasti, which of course sounds like this. And let's hear it show its stuff and some other sounds as well. Like, the interesting thing is, I'm not putting any dry into this. you're hearing a little bit of raw sound coming through the Bricasti in this little loop. If I go over to mine, it's going to be a little raunchier, but it'll have the same sort of resonance and depth to it. And I had to put a little bit of dry into it to get a similar effect, because if I put it to full wet, it's not quite the same. And you can hear just a hint of what's probably early reflections in the Bricasti one. Whereas if we go back to mine, you don't hear as much of that early reflection in there. Instead, it's just the density of it all. And let's see if I cut that a little tighter so that it doesn't hit that guitar every time. Here we have the real deal Bricasti on some distant drums in such a way where it sounds basically like it's a loop. And that sounds awesome. It ought to sound awesome. It's the real thing. It's about as close as you'll get to putting up microphones in a real space. Whereas mine's not going to sound quite like it, but hopefully it'll still work and sound far away and have roughly the same tonal coloration and a bit of a price difference. And what we can do again is do a little panning, and we'll go back to having it be literally stereo. You're hearing the left side from mine and the right side from the real Bricasti. And then we'll let it go on into the guitar thing, also in dual mode. And that's kCathedral. One side Airwindows, one side Bricasti. It's not the same. It's not a clone, because I'm not doing clones and I'm not trying to steal from KC of Bricasti, but I'm trying to make something that will also be useful in the same contexts as one might use the real Bricasti. And there you have it. So my hope is that this is the first in a series of things where I will try increasingly hard to get exactly the right tone out of these example recordings I've made, such as the one that you just heard. And the better I do at it, and the more I can learn, the better my results will be. And in line with the stuff that I was doing with the kPlates that were not intended to be like Bricasti, but they were chasing the sounds of some Waves plugins that people ran into some drama around and wanted to find replacements for. Well, I don't think you're going to find similar drama around Bricasti. If you can get one of those, you'll probably be able to get that thing and enjoy what it does, and it'll probably always be able to be just a little more Bricasti-y than anything that I care to make, because I might be actively trying to make stuff with its own spin. I don't want to do exact clones, but I want it to do the same work, the same job. And that's what I'm doing here. This is the first serious attempt at trying to do that with the reference files I've got. And with mine, every single new reverb that I do, which also holds for, say, KAR chamber and the kPlate plugins and in fact every setting on ClearCoat. Every single reverb algorithm that I do is distinct and novel. So if there's like a funny high frequency or mid-range overtone in one of them, well, then try another one. That applies to ClearCoat as well. If a particular setting like honks in an unpleasant way, then nudge it, try something else. Because rather than just shifting the sizes or whatever, it's literally a completely different set of reverb constants in there. And as a result, all of those pseudo rooms will sound a little bit different. And kCathedral has its own bespoke reverb algorithm calculated out for it. And next time I go back into the well and do another Bricasti-inspired thing, then that will have its own distinct, unique algorithm. Now, admittedly, if I find the magical perfect algorithm and all of a sudden one is just say I accidentally stumble across an algorithm akin to what Casey was using in the Bricasti stuff, well, then that's only going to be the one time, and I'll never know it because I don't have Bricasti code. But I think it's more important to make unique spaces that you can place mixes and sound effects and things in. And with a bit of luck, this one can find uses, especially if you can't afford to run out and just get a Bricasti and the analog studio around it. Granted, you can do digital in and out. What you were hearing was not going digital in and out. What you were hearing was the full-on analog studio using a Heritage Audio line mixer as well. So the total amount of money that went into making that reference recording was kind of unreasonably a lot. But that's what I use for targets to try to make my plugins around. I'm not very interested in being like, oh yeah, I downloaded a hack of this particular thing and I did it in my laptop and now I'm going to try to rival that. No. What I'm going to try to rival is the full-on real deal at its best. The full-on Bricasti running in the effects loop of a Heritage Audio summing mixer that is being fed to a Lavry AD10. Serious stuff. And that's what you're hearing, and that's what I was doing with the left-right thing, where you're hearing both of them at the same time, and one of them is on one channel, one of them is on the other channel. And the idea is not it's going to be a perfect stereo balance thing, although I made efforts to make the stereo behavior of kCathedral work similarly to the stereo behavior of the Bricasti, because part of my reference sound there, the drum tracks intentionally go hard left and hard right in certain places, specifically so I can get a sense of what the Bricasti is doing under those circumstances and then model it. And I have done. I have done my level best to try to make it act like and give a similar space to what the real deal one does. I guess that's about enough of that. So go and play with kCathedral. If this is the kind of thing that you like, go and play with it, see what you can get out of it. It is free because I am Patreon supported open source, which also means that if you were a programmer, or if you are a audio guy making synthesizers or DAWs or whatever, you can build my stuff into your stuff for free. You got to credit it. It's MIT licensed, so it's not just public domain. You got to credit it, but you get to use it, because that's just how I roll. And I hope you enjoy kCathedral. I'll get busy working on something else, and also more of the Bricasti-based things as well. Talk to you later, and I'll see folks on my live streams these days. And bye-bye.